Hello, everyone, and welcome to our show this Thursday night. We're going to give it a second and share a couple of places, and then we will get started. Um, have an exciting show lined up for you guys today. All right, bear with us just one moment. All right. All right, so tonight we have a very special show planned. April is Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month, and we thought it would be remiss to not use our platform to bring some light to such an important issue affecting a wonderful group of people. So we wanted to bring on a couple of experts to talk to us about this topic and share in this dialogue. Uniquely Perfect, a conversation on autism. So we have with us tonight Kristen Bennett out of Salisbury, North Carolina. She is a eighth grade middle school educator who is mom to two boys, one of which is on the spectrum. And we have Christina Fletcher, who is the program director for the Arise and Shine Child Care Center. She is an experienced educator who does have a background dealing with exceptional education. So we are excited to have both of them on our show tonight to share in this conversation with us. As we've been talking behind the scenes and talking before the broadcast, autism as a term seems to have just really come into our public consciousness. It feels like recently.
Mhm.
Research on this really just began in the last a few years, which isn't a long time in terms of research. But we're just now starting in the last probably 10 years to hear more about it in society and in the public consciousness. The CDC actually estimates that 1 in 54 children have been identified as being on the spectrum, having one of the related conditions to this. So even if you haven't heard about it close to you, it's touching you in some way. So we definitely wanted to take this time, have a conversation, and hopefully uh, help somebody and also engage the community for support. Um, Mom, take it away.
Well, good evening, everyone. And again, we are so glad to have our guest here tonight. This is going to be a very informative session. And as we're going along, audience, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to do so. We want this to help as many people as possible and definitely be a educating experience. And I say that even for myself because I'm not real versed on autism and being on the spectrum. So this is going to be a great help for me. And as Shafran just said, uh, it touches you directly or indirectly. You know, that's a staggering statistic to see that 1 in 54 children in the United States are being diagnosed. And so that means that, you know, someone in your circle or someone that is in your circle that knows someone is affected. So let's kind of just jump right in. And I want to start with you, Kristen. Um, Tell us a little bit about what autism is. Kind of give us a layman's term definition.
Okay, so autism it refers to a broad range of conditions and characteristics um, for a person that has challenges with social skills, repetitive behavior, their speech, nonverbal communications, all those types of things. But in more layman's terms, a person who is on the spectrum for autism brain is wired differently than what we would call neurotypical people. So this is some new terminology. There's a term called neurodiverse, meaning everybody's brain does not function the same way. And with autism, that's kind of a term just to address people who have a completely different type of wiring. So that's kind of the general thing. You may hear it referred to as autism spectrum disorder, but the community is really trying to move away from that word disorder because it implies that something is wrong or needs to be fixed. That is not true for people who are on the spectrum for autism. They don't need to be fixed. They need to be accommodated and supported.
Okay. Well, okay then. That's I clearly understand that. It helps. Now, when you say the spectrum, is that a I guess I want to say a series or another I don't want to say disorder, but that's the term that we're talking about now. Is that does that include other conditions, or just give us a definition of the spectrum?
Sometimes ADHD is on the spectrum. Obsessive compulsive disorder or being obsessive compulsive is on the spectrum. But what it really means is there are no two people with autism who need the exact same thing.
Okay.
When they say spectrum, what they're trying to get you to focus on is to focus on every person with autism is completely different. What they need is different. The supports they may need is different. There are some people who are autistic and you may never know it. In some old terminology is to say they are high functioning. We're trying to get away from that because they may still need support, but it just means it's not as readily noticeable. And then you have people who are autistic who are completely nonverbal, or have really obvious behaviors that it's easy to see and know that they're different. So spectrum is just to recognize that there could be someone you would deem as completely normal and they can be on the spectrum. So it's a wide range of how this can affect somebody's life.
Okay, and I think about when I was, younger, and so many people were just lumped into one category as being special or have a disability, or this term autism that was not even talked about. And so I think about so many people that probably were either misdiagnosed or not diagnosed at all, and or just got lost in the shuffle. And so to have to the point where we are now, I think it's a great thing. Christina, tell us a little bit about your experience, or some of your experience working with special needs or children on the spectrum.
Experience happened in the elementary school setting. And we had a lot of disabilities. We had like a melting pot going on at one time. But one thing that I found that added a passion for me about early intervention was that a lot of it was just behavior driven. It wasn't, for at least for the students that I was working with, it wasn't their ability to learn or any, it was mostly behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So they would have had some younger, and they would be more successful in include or being able to go join their class for a time, come on out. But most of this that I worked with were in a class what they call self-contained, meaning that they in that class all day and they're not really interacting with peers on their grade level.
Well, did you find in your experience?
Those students,
okay, go ahead.
It wasn't because they couldn't do work. It was just they had, and if these and everything that they needed to have and see the tools that they needed, then they wouldn't have had to be in a self-contained environment.
Okay. Well, do you in your experience have you found that
Mississippi, one thing about in Mississippi, the one thing that I love about the difference between North Carolina and Mississippi is that when it comes to autism, I was going to say that, in North Carolina, they have schools that deal with autism just for that, and that's just Mississippi. In the public schools, you're not going to find that. So you have a melting pot where you have all children with all the abilities, because I don't want to call them disabilities, but all these different abilities that vary, and it sort of makes
Y'all bear with us. The internet is a challenge. I think we all know that here in our virtual environment. So just hang in there with us.
Yes.
Can you all hear?
We can kind of hear you.
Okay, because I'm freezing. Yes, I'm intermittently freezing, and I'm sorry about that if it's the internet. Okay, let's go on then. Thank you, Christina. Comments were wonderful. Kristen, let's talk about your personal experience with your son. Let's start with, when did you begin to, and what age is he now? Let's ask that question first.
Okay, so Jaden is 11, going on 12 right now, which is so hard to believe.
I know it is. Yeah.
But it all started when he was probably about 2.5, 3 years old. Jaden was hitting all his milestones, sometimes early, but right on cue, and then all of a sudden it just stopped. Okay. And I could tell something wasn't quite right, but I did not have the knowledge in order to go, this is what it is. But I knew something wasn't right. And I remember, I'm not even sure if Christina remembers this, but Christina called me one day and she said, Kristen, you are not going to like what I'm going to say, but it has
I
to be
remember.
said.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, Jaden is on a spectrum for autism, and you need to get him evaluated immediately. And I kind of get a sigh of relief. I was like, that's what it is. And as she talks, I don't know why you thought I would be mad. You finally gave me words for I know there's something not quite right with my baby. So I started with this pediatrician. She wasn't trying to hear me. She gave me all these reasons as to why Jaden is not hitting these social cues and these other milestones, and his speech became delayed, and all it's because he's not in daycare. I thought that was hogwash, so I got a new pediatrician. That pediatrician put in a recommendation for him to be evaluated, but at the time we lived in Mississippi. At this time, Mississippi only had one doctor that would evaluate autism in a child that young, because he's only like 2-3 years old at the time.
Okay.
And they, because there was only one, they were severely backlogged.
Okay.
At the time, I was a single mom, on welfare, all this good stuff. So I could not afford to just pay out of pocket to go somewhere else. So I kind of had to work the system. Eventually, I put Jaden in Head Start, and I did this with the intention of they're going to see it and they're going to evaluate him, because that is the law. So you have federal money, you have to do this. That did not happen. We eventually relocated to North Carolina right before Jaden started kindergarten. At this point, I also have my degree in education, and nobody's listening to me. I'm talking to Head Start teachers. Nobody wants to hear me. Oh, Jaden's just a little different. He's going to be okay. And I'm like, no. That's not how this is going to work. So, moved to North Carolina. When I went to register him for school, I purposely waited until maybe a week or two before school started, because I was pretty sure teachers would be there. I went to the office. I said, I need to register my child for school, but first I need to talk to a kindergarten teacher. One came up and I said, listen, my child is autistic. I know he's autistic. I've been trying to get him evaluated for the last 2-3 years with no avail. I do not want to send my child into a classroom without an IEP. So, because that would mean he is not getting the accommodation and the support that he needs. And I need you to tell me what I need to do to get him an IEP ASAP. She told me what to do, which was to write a letter, and that they would fast track it. They decided to go ahead and put him in her class since she had already had contact with me. I had a letter in his book bag on the first day of kindergarten, ready to go. By Thanksgiving, he had been evaluated, had an IEP. It was in a program specially designed for students with autism, and we've pretty much been smooth sailing ever since.
Wow.
But it took me refusing to take no for an answer and advocating for my child. So that was the whole process, just to get evaluated.
But that's what I gathered from that, being persistent and advocating. And then for Christina to have picked up, and Christina, this is what I want to ask you. What did you see in Jaden that let you know, what are some signs or symptoms that you saw that said, hey, this child may be on the spectrum? Hello? Is Christina still on? Can anyone hear me?
We can hear you.
But we can't hear Christina.
We can't hear Christina. Okay, well, we will come back to her then. We'll keep going. Okay, Kristen, you got to the point where you got a diagnosis. He's identified. He's in a classroom. He's doing wonderful. But I'm sure along the way there have been challenges. Can you kind of just maybe talk a little bit about that, as being a parent of a child on the spectrum?
Um, Before having him evaluated when he was much younger, his he would have what we would probably identify as a tantrum, right?
Okay.
This would happen whenever we were off our typical routine, when he was in new places, around new people. Um, it was always an adjustment. So what had to happen was one, me researching on my own, trying to figure out different ways to help him. And then ultimately, I had to develop a whole lot of patience.
Okay.
And my communication skills had to grow. Jaden, you have to speak in simplest terms.
Okay.
He does not understand sarcasm, which is hard for me because I'm naturally a very sarcastic person. But he does not get that. You have to have his full attention. One way that autism is described is they kind of have their own little world in their brain, and they are always there, and you kind of have to snap them out of it and say, hey, right here. So Jaden, one thing is you can't just talk to Jaden and assume that he hears you. He does not hear you.
Okay.
He is in ninja mode, anime mode.
Okay.
With his toy soldiers having his war. He's somewhere else. So you have to make eye contact. You have to get his undivided attention. With giving him instructions,
to be
you have to keep it
honest,
simple.
I probably noticed it long before Kristen ever really noticed it. She said 2 or 3. I
Live people.
noticed. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead. Yeah, we can.
Talking.
Go ahead. Keep going.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We can now.
I hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, Lord.
She must not can hear us.
Seems like we have a delay.
It's a big delay.
Yeah, it seems like a serious delay.
I am going to do some magic and see if I can fix this. You guys keep going.
Okay.
Okay.
So
now,
where was I? Simple instructions, making sure you have his attention. It also seems he's developed a bit. What was tantrums when he was younger is now anxiety. There was an incident where he was taken to a skating rink, and it was his first time going, and there were a lot of people, and he just panicked. And he was not with me, but he was with my aunt, not Christina, but a different aunt, who spends a lot of time with, and she has anxiety issues of her own, so she noticed it and knew what to do for him. She took him out of that environment, she took him back home, helped her relax, and that solved the problem. So actually a lot of really holistic things like meditating really helps Jaden. Gum helps Jaden. It's calming for him. So really any way you would kind of manage anxiety works well for Jaden, because that kind of seems to be how his behaviors show up the most.
And is it safe to say that in general, no two children are alike, but that parents of children that are on the spectrum just generally have to find a way to deal or handle their child in the manner that they see fit according to that individual?
Yes, it is very much you deal with that individual with what works for them.
Okay. Well, one question I wanted to ask then, relating to that, I guess. Okay, Jaden has a brother. So how do they how do they interact? Because Jacob is not on the spectrum, correct?
No, he's not.
And Jaden is. And so how do they interact as brothers?
Their interaction is fine, other than the fact that Jaden gets pretty annoyed with Jacob. Like any other set of brothers. For
Yes.
the most part, Jacob, because he's the younger brother, Jada's always been like this. So I don't think he really even acknowledges that there is a difference.
That's
This is
good.
just the way Jaden is.
Great.
I do think he recognizes that Jaden needs a little more guidance sometimes than he does.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
with Jacob's personality, because he is my child, he likes
Mm-hmm.
to kind of try to take control of that.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to remind him that he is not the boss of Jaden. That Jaden can speak and think for himself.
Okay.
So he means it to be helpful, but it's a hey, Jaden can talk. Because you will ask Jaden a question, and if Jaden takes too long to start to answer you, Jacob will jump in, and you have to hey wait, Jacob, Jaden can talk. Just give him a
Okay.
minute. It may take him a
Okay.
minute to get all his words together, but he can speak for
Good.
himself.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. Krishna, are you back on the air with us?
Please. So,
I see all the
Hello?
bars.
Okay. Okay. Well, hopefully she'll be able to jump back in before we're done.
I don't know what's
um,
happening.
yes, I don't either. Okay, well, we're gonna keep on, Kristen. We're gonna keep on plugging.
Okay.
Um, let's talk about then some we kind of dived in a little bit, some parenting strategies that you
Mhm.
can, that you use, and that maybe you can also help some other parents um, that may need it.
Huh. Strategies. Oh gosh. So this is hard for me because I don't necessarily feel like I have strategies that are specific to autism.
Well, some that you that
Uh,
go ahead.
because I kind of have the thought process that all children should not be parented the same way anyway.
True, very true. That's kind of what we just
Um,
said.
so yeah.
Well, how about
uh,
let's say it like let's say it that let's like this. You said one thing I think all parents should have, and especially even more so, you said patience.
uh-huh.
And I think about, you need that with any child, but I would think even more so, with a child that needs that extra. So
Yes.
along those lines, is there, just in general, just some things that, would help?
I think one thing that would help is one of the characteristics of autism is repetitive behavior.
Okay.
One of
Yes.
Jaden's repetitive behaviors is if it is a day before he will typically have school, he will ask you at some point in the evening, do I have school tomorrow? We all know that the answer is yes, but just
Okay.
say yes. Don't cop an
Okay.
attitude. Don't do this. Or
Mm-hmm.
if you do,
Mm-hmm.
kind of let it be an inside joke.
Mm-hmm.
Example, Jaden
Mm-hmm.
always asks me what I'm cooking for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say food. That's always my answer. He laughs, he walks away. But I also do
Okay.
that to his brother. So it's not unique to Jaden. I
Mm-hmm.
always say that. Or he
Mm-hmm.
will ask me, like he'll see chicken defrosted and go, are we having chicken for dinner? Jaden, did you see chicken in the sink? Yes. Okay, so what does that mean? We're having chicken for dinner. All right, then. See, look how smart you are. You already figured that. You didn't even need to ask me that. Like, it's a way to, it's kind of our inside joke. This is how we communicate with each other. And he totally gets that. Another thing is, and I think this is big in parenting in general, is
Mm-hmm.
admitting when you were wrong and apologizing. So
Ah.
there was a situation where one morning we're getting ready to go to school. Jaden asks me, am I going to school today? Me being flustered for whatever reason that morning said, no, you're not going to school today, Jaden. Now get in the car. So we get in the car, I drive him to daycare. And when I'm trying to get him out of the car, he is crying. And I said, Jaden, what is wrong with you? Why are you crying? He said, you lied to me. And I
Mm.
felt so terrible because in my moment of having my own thing going on and being upset, I did not recognize that my child does not respond well to this type of communication. And
Mm-hmm.
so right
Mm-hmm.
then and there, I said, Jaden, I am sorry. You are right. I
Mm.
lied to you, and that wasn't right, and I'll never do it again. And he
Wow.
got his stuff together. He said, okay. And then we went into the daycare. So
Mm.
just admitting that I was wrong is all he needed in that situation. So that could have been a whole thing. If I, well, you're going to school, and I could have did all of that, and that would have just made it. It would
Work.
just prolong the process instead of just
Mm-hmm.
saying I'm
Mm-hmm.
wrong and apologizing for that and never doing it again. So, Jaden and sarcasm, not friends, and I have to acknowledge that
Have to
when I'm
acknowledge
speaking
that.
to him. Right.
Wow.
But
That's
there's a beauty in not having that gray area. If only
Mhm.
we can all somehow be like that, you know.
that is true. That is very
Mhm.
true. His yes is yes, his no is no, and you don't have to guess. And so
Right.
that's kind of a good thing. That's kind of a good thing. Um, let's go ahead then and tackle this autism and race and the disparity. I have a statistic here that says, first of all, even before I say race, the genders that 1 in 34
Mhm.
boys are identified with autism compared to 1 in 144 girls. Boys
Yeah.
are 4 times more likely to be diagnosed with autism than girls. Now that kind of floored me. And I
Mhm.
think about, especially, I have to, black boys. I have to think about, because this panel is consists of black women. And I think about in the day, like I had said at the top of the show, you know, not knowing at that time what autism was, or what it looked like or anything like that, and how many of our young boys that were, like I said, misdiagnosed or not diagnosed and just labeled troubled, or
Mhm.
or what have you, and where that may have led adults to this point. And so to just look at that statistic is a little ring to me. And so I just wanted to throw that one in. So relating
Mhm.
that to race, um, do you see a disparity in diagnosis, help, access, or what have you, based on race in the autism spectrum?
Um. Yes,
I
that's
know,
the short
I
answer.
know. Yes, I
Because
know.
we live in America and everything's built on white supremacy, so of course there's going to be differences in the way people are handled in regards to race.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
That is absolutely a factor. I know a lot of times, especially in the Black community, we are very fearful of differences, especially differences that mean life could be quote unquote harder for you when you're
mm-hmm,
already Black,
mm-hmm,
because that's enough in itself to deal with. And then when you put something else on it, like autism, we're
mm-hmm,
very worrisome when it comes to that type of thing. And I think that
mm-hmm,
absolutely contributes to not getting the early interventions that we
mm-hmm,
need to get.
mm-hmm.
I have noticed that with Jaden, like I said, he's in a class specifically for students with autism. There may be, there's
Okay,
always less than 10 kids in his class. Most of them are white.
okay,
And
okay,
I'm sure
okay.
that is not all the kids in that school who need that service, but that's who's
Mm-hmm,
receiving it. Um,
okay.
there's also the whole system of dealing with public schools, and you have to know the right people to get the right services, and certain people got to be in the meeting for the service to even be an option. That
Mm-hmm,
was definitely the case with Jaden.
mm-hmm,
Um, and if you're not kind of on the inside of things, you're not
mm-hmm,
aware of that. Like, I wasn't aware that North Carolina had classes specifically for students with autism. Not even in me pushing for him to get evaluated. It was not until his IEP was done and he had been evaluated that the EC teacher who did it called me and she said, we have to meet on this day because this is the only day this director person can be there and they're the only one who can propose the solution that Jaden actually needs.
So this information isn't readily available.
No, it is not. So if that person could not have been in that meeting, Jaden does not get in the class that he needs to get into. Because they're the only person who can even say it. And I was like, what's up with this kind of secrecy almost? That people aren't supposed to know that this is a thing. And she said, I know that's messed up, but this is where you need to be here in order to get Jaden where he needs to be. And actually, our district ended up officially doing away with the program, but the particular school and principal said, absolutely not. We have too many babies who need this, and so we're keeping it. And so their kind of section of the district has decided amongst themselves that whatever funding they got to move around for their school to make it happen, that's what they're going to do because it is needed. Like this, in this district goes all the way through high school, actually.
Wow.
And it's only a certain set of schools that do this particular program. So I was talking about race, but sometimes there are things that we don't even know are happening. We don't know are available to us. And that's common among...
this goes right into the next topic, community awareness. Go ahead.
Yeah, we don't know.
Well, I was just gonna tie something back. I'm waiting.
Yeah, go ahead.
We can get Christina back here.
I know. I wish we could get her on. Yes.
She's back. And we were talking before the broadcast, and when she was talking earlier about early intervention. So the CDC says that screening around, the age of 2 can be considered reliable. You can be as young as 18 months. Most people don't go, don't find out until later. And you talked about like the difference between, say, Mississippi and the difference between North Carolina, right?
Right.
Funding is a key issue, and funding for education on a whole has been unequitable for people of color, for Black folks. So that has to weigh in a whole lot into not just the early intervention and diagnosis perspective, but also support of programs that support families. It's a community issue.
Exactly. And again, I wish Christina was on. She mentioned and that as a people, the stigma or the shame that we have sometimes concerning this and mental illness and anything that looks different, and sometimes that will hinder us or slow us the intervention or the diagnosis, the early diagnosis, what have you. So that's something that we got to overcome, and that the community has to do better in supporting families. And that's kind of goes into our next topic. Keep going.
One thing about race and autism, when I was writing this note, I was also thinking about current events, and I just want to pose this question to you, Kristen, however you want to answer this. How does the current climate in terms of the police and the government, how does that play into your feelings about having a Black son who is on the spectrum?
It terrifies me, in a word. I remember some years ago when Tamir Rice was murdered by the police for playing with a toy gun in the park. So, like I said, Jaden is a ninja. He has an obsession with play swords and play guns and all of that. And when that first happened, it made me like, oh God, Jada's never going to take another toy gun outside of this house. But I realized that I cannot live in fear.
Exactly.
And I don't want him to live in fear either, because this is not even a concept that he really even understands. All I can do is be vigilant as a parent. Thankfully, we live in a neighborhood where all the kids have all the toys outside, and there really aren't any issues where we live when it comes to that type of thing. But just being aware and kind of trying to figure out how to even navigate the conversation of race with him in a way that he can even understand without creating fear. That is something I have not cracked that puzzle just yet. When I do, I will let somebody know, but that is something that is concerning for me.
Wow. Well, let me ask you, I didn't at the top, but you may have alluded to it. Where his progress, where is he now? How is he in his abilities and everything from, I guess, if you looked at it from the time he was 2 until now, his progress as an individual?
His progress has been tremendous. And I accredit that mostly to actually getting a formal evaluation and diagnosis and getting him in the program that he actually needs. His speech is much better than it used to be. In terms of his IEPs, he always meets his goals. He has super supportive, super loving teachers. His life skills are great as well, which is a focus of his class. Me and his father made the decision to take him out of the traditional curriculum in school where they do all the standardized testing and all of that stuff, because that was just frustrating for Jaden, and it became a setback for him whenever it was time to do testing. So that is the decision that we have made. I know we can change it whenever we decide to, but for now, that's what works for Jaden. And that's what we're working through at this point.
Well, let me ask another question then. What are your hopes and goals for him in the future? For as going, he's 12, and so he's edging on into teenager, and he young adult. What are you, what are your goals and your hopes for him?
What's interesting to me, at least, is that my hopes for him have not changed, because my hope for both my children has always been that they can be happy, functioning members of society. That's what I want for them. Whatever that ends up looking like for them. And I say so far so good. Jaden is probably the happiest person that I know. And he definitely functions. Sometimes you have to redirect him, but for the most part, he knows his routine and he knows what to do and when to do it. And you don't really have to say a whole lot to him. He just kind of goes with it. I will say technology is a huge help in that department, because Jaden has a schedule, and as long as he has an alarm to remind him of when to go where, he's good to go.
That's good.
That's awesome. Because some parents, they have these expectations, when you have children, and then when things aren't the way you thought they were going to be, and this is life, when it doesn't, then you're disappointed or you're dejected or what have you. But to hear, like you're saying, and that's wonderful, and that's what we all should want, for our children to be healthy, functioning members of society. And so I think that's some good advice for parents. We said it at the top, uniquely perfect. We're all different in different ways. And so when you put I won't say unrealistic, but expectations that God didn't design them for. I think it puts undue pressure on the child, and then I think it also maybe puts undue pressure on the parent. If I'm
Right.
wrong, you correct me.
No, you're
But
absolutely right. One thing that I am learning is a lot of times we cause disappointment for ourselves because we have these expectations that nobody agrees to. Like you can expect your baby to become a doctor, but if they never agree to that, why are you disappointed when they're 33 and working in tech? They never told you that's what they were going to do. They never committed to that. Why are you upset?
That's
and even
true.
if they did, they are a full human being who has the right to change their mind. So
Exactly.
expectation is be happy, be a productive member of society, be healthy, and the rest of it, let it fall how it may. That's how I feel about it.
That's a great. I feel the same way. Great attitude. Well, let's round this out and talk about some resources and support. Are there support groups that you may be a part of, or are there? You talked about the educational part, which sounds wonderful, but are there other support in the medical field or other organizations that our audience might want to tap into?
Any community that I have found it on my own accord, usually through social media.
Okay.
I follow a ton of mothers, particularly Black mothers who have children with autism. And that is the community that I've kind of created for myself. I post about Jaden's autism on like Instagram and things like that. And that has led other people to finding me because the unfortunate fact is there's not a lot of research, particularly with Black people in autism.
Okay.
And so I've actually been contacted by like grad students over the years to help them do research because we don't participate in the research, it'll never exist. So, I've been very proactive about creating my community, but that's usually how these things go, especially since when we started talking, we said this is kind of new. So there's not a lot of history there for there to be this built-in kind of support group type thing.
Okay.
And I've never heard of a support group for autism.
Okay.
But that's me.
Okay.
That's my
Go ahead,
I was just gonna say that kind of leads to another question I had about that. We're all family, right?
Exactly.
So how can the community, support families affected by autism, and how can families kind of gather around to help each other? I want to ask Christina to jump in on this one because I think she has bars. I think she does. Won't he do it? Won't he will? Okay.
Yay!
Is she there?
Yeah.
I am.
Okay, good.
Yeah, she's there.
I had to change devices, but we got this thing working.
Okay. Well, let's get you back in. Oh, let me see. Where do I start? Oh my goodness. I'm gonna have to recap for you. Well, I got 3 questions there. Let's go back to you were answering, but you got real chopped up. Helping Kristen realize or to identify that Jaden was on the spectrum. What signs or symptoms did you see in him to let you know this is what's going on?
Well, I believe I noticed it maybe about a year before she ever noticed it. Kristen stated 2 or 3, and I noticed it around about 1 because Jaden started talking at 9 months, which was pretty young for
That's
talking.
very young.
but he
Yes.
was saying daddy and bye and hey. And then gradually I noticed that he really wasn't saying those things anymore.
Hmm.
And so the loss of speech was a gradual thing, but he gained it so early. And I think when being in a special needs environment sort of made my light bulb go off, I was like, okay, I
Mm-hmm.
see this. Let's see if I notice anything else. And then over time, I would notice other things like when when he didn't get his way, it wasn't just a tantrum.
Okay.
The way that he would express it, he would just fall out and just scream, and you couldn't figure out what is it that you're upset about. And so I had started noticing some things and taking some notes, but then I was sort of nervous about saying something to Kristen about it because I was like, I don't know how she's going to take this because,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the last thing you want to hear is that your child is different.
Mm-hmm. We talked
That's
about that.
anybody. That's
Mm-hmm.
anybody.
Mm-hmm.
When
That's
you find
anybody.
out that you're expecting, your automatic response is my baby is going to be healthy and they're going to, and
Mm-hmm.
our idea
Mm-hmm.
of what healthy is.
Exactly.
So, because we have these ideals already in our mind set up of how our child is going to be,
Mm-hmm.
and Jaden is healthy. He's just different.
That's right.
That's all it is that he's
Mm-hmm.
different. And I
Mm-hmm.
think
Mm-hmm.
that, and so I was nervous about it because I didn't really know how she was going to take, you know, my observations. So I
Mm-hmm.
waited a while before I said anything to
Mm-hmm.
her.
Mm-hmm.
And I really had to pray about it. I was like, Lord, do I say something? Do I say something? But it had gotten to the point where, because my heart was about, okay, if we can get him tested, then we can get him into therapies, then okay. I was thinking about future and going to school. And so I was like, let's get this ball rolling. And I also talked to a friend of mine whose child was diagnosed young.
Okay.
And so I got some advice from her before I even talked to Kristen,
Mm-hmm.
because when I talked to her, I wanted to give her steps that she could take and
That's
things that I
good.
knew that she could do,
That's
so
really good.
that, I just can't drop a bomb on her and then not give her some steps.
Exactly.
So, and that's
Exactly.
what I did. I spoke with her, and I just asked her, I was like, okay, this is what I'm seeing. I'm thinking that this is what but you don't know until you get a diagnosis. So the hard part was getting the diagnosis.
Mm,
And
mm.
and it didn't even, and in Mississippi, unfortunately, University Hospital for people who can't afford for a private person to do the
Mhm,
testing is the place that does the testing. But
mm.
their waiting list is 3 years long.
Ooh.
And most of the people who need to get the testing are people who have Medicaid, who have CHIP,
Mhm,
who don't have the money to pay for a private person to evaluate their child. And that's wrong.
it is. It is. That
Just
kind
to
of
be
goes.
frank, it's wrong.
It's
It
wrong.
is
It's
very
wrong.
wrong.
It's very
It's
wrong.
wrong.
Mm.
So I, I think, and I did, the one part that I did hear you say is that there was a difference in funding and support, and that's so
Yes.
true, because especially in Mississippi, they have a school now for children with autism called Spectrum,
Okay.
but who can pay for that?
Ah.
Everybody can't pay for that.
Mhm.
So,
Mm.
then what do you do when you need to send your child to a public school setting?
Right.
Mm.
What do you do? And you know that more than likely they're going to be in the mix with children with other children who have different abilities than that child. So that's not the primary focus. And so I don't know really what the solution is. I know I want to be a part of the solution. I know that, when I talked to this other parent, I asked them, I said, what would you have wanted when your child was in preschool? And because he was diagnosed at a preschool age, what would you have desired for your family? What kind of support system would you have liked to have seen? And one thing that she said to me, which I thought was very beneficial, was she said, when I have to take him to therapy, I have to go one place for speech and another place for occupational and another place. And it's not all in one place. So she was like, if the center would allow for the therapist to come into that one setting where the child doesn't have to leave, they're already in a setting that they're comfortable with, because that's one thing that they have difficulty with is all the change.
Right.
It keeps them in a routine. It keeps them in a safe place, and they know that that person's going to come in and work with me while I'm in school. And so that's one of the things that I'm really praying and hoping that Rise and Shine will be able to do for children who are tested and are autistic, and that we can contract with people so that they can get all of their therapies in one place. And the parent doesn't have to go, hey, okay, I'm in Crystal Springs, and now I have to go to North Jackson, and then I have to go to Pearl, and then I have to go to Madison. That's a lot.
That is a lot. That's a lot of running around.
And you'll do it, but if there's something that can be done where you can have that in one space, then that would be awesome.
And you just mentioned a luxury, because the Jackson has a decent sized metro area, if you want to say that. But once you get outside the Jackson metro, a lot of it is rural.
Right.
And then what? You might be, an hour and a half, 2 hours from the services you need.
Right.
Yes. So what I'm getting a lot of is one early diagnosis. And Christina, you were talking before the show about how important it is, and that to remove the shame or the stigma behind it, especially in our community. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes. One thing I love Kristen's attitude about Jaden and Jacob. I want them to grow up to be productive members of society and happy. And if that is our and that should be the expectation that we have for our child. So that way, if we have that mindset, then it doesn't matter if their ability is autism, and it doesn't matter if their ability is Down syndrome, and it doesn't matter if their ability is spina bifida. It doesn't matter.
That's true. That is very true.
And what you do is, and if you advocate for your child and you make sure that they're getting everything that they need, and that even you push them as far as they can be pushed, because that's one thing too, is sometimes as a parent, when you find out, you be like, oh, now what am I going to do? And okay, well, I'm just going to prepare for them I'm going to take care of them for the rest of their life. And because a lot of people just go to the far extreme of it, instead of saying, okay, what can I do that can push my child just to be as independent as they can
be? Exactly.
Because you have to, you have to think future, because at some point you're not going to be here.
It's very true.
You're not going to be able to take care of them. So
That's true.
what skills are you giving them? What tools are you giving them so that they can take care of themselves at some degree?
Mm,
Mm-hmm.
that's
It
that's
doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be where they're fully independent, but they need to have some level of independence.
So
basically.
And
Oh, okay. Go ahead. We're both trying to say.
I was going to say that I think that sometimes, parents with special needs, sometimes they just say, okay, well, that's it, and I'm not going to push, and they drop
Mm-hmm.
their expectations for their child,
Okay.
or they
That's
lower them. And
Mm-hmm.
they can do more than you think.
mm-hmm,
And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I found out, is that
mm-hmm,
they can do more than you think they can. On the
mm-hmm.
surface, it's just you have to adjust how you do it. But that
Right.
doesn't mean that they can't do it. That
That's a
doesn't
good point.
mean, yeah, you just have to adjust. It's just like we're all different and we
Mm-hmm.
all learn differently. And so we have to adjust to understand and to get the information that we need, and that's the same thing. And I think it's for, especially for anybody with any disability, but since we're talking about autism, it's a mind change on how you perceive it and how you think about it and how you approach it.
Mm.
Right.
We have to change our minds on how we look at things. It's not bad, it's just
That's a good
different.
perspective. It's just different. It's just different.
so
Shafran, you
don't
had something? Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, in other words, it sounds like you're saying don't sell your child short. And I think
Don't.
that's it's good to,
Right.
practice for anybody, because if you tell your child what they will be, in their mind they'll be limited in a way to what you say that they are.
Mm-hmm,
How many people
mm-hmm.
got told you ain't never gonna be nothing, you just like your daddy,
That's right.
whatever
Yeah,
the case may
Right.
be.
yeah, yeah.
And they limited themselves to that.
That's true. Basically,
Right.
just push your child to their full potential,
Yes.
Right.
and whatever that is, that's
And
you
wherever that is.
wherever that is. This is good. This is good. Um, well, we might have thoroughly covered. Fran, you got any other questions
I
coming?
got one more. We've
Go ahead.
talked a lot about the kids, but how do we
Yes,
support the
the
parent?
parents.
Because
Mm-hmm.
it's a holistic thing, just in general. People are so concerned about the kids in general, which we should be, but parents tend to fall by the wayside in terms of their self-care, their mental health, etc., etc. And I imagine, and you can weigh in on this, that it has to be a little bit different when your child has different needs.
Mhm.
It's
Um.
almost like Christina was saying, when that parent had said she has to go from place to place to place. She's tired. But go ahead,
Yeah.
Kristen. Go ahead.
What I was gonna say is, the saying it takes a village to raise a child. That is even more important when you have a differently abled child.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so my village has been of the utmost importance. Um, from Christina saying, "Hey, I think this is what's going on," and already giving me those first steps,
Mm-hmm.
to, like I said, when Jaden had the anxiety attack, and having an aunt who already understood anxiety and knew how to handle that.
Mm-hmm.
I know from my own experience, I had really terrible asthma as a child, for people watching and don't know that. But so it was hard sometimes for my mom to find people to watch me when she has to
Mm-hmm.
work or things like that, because they were
Mm-hmm.
concerned of, oh my God, what if she has an asthma attack and I won't know what to do? Or it's the same thing with Jaden. But I don't really have that problem, thankfully. Because I have people who, Jaden is a regular kid. Yes, he's wired differently, but if you tell him to go sit down, he will go sit down. If you say go outside and play, he will go outside and play. and all of that. So that's having people to watch your kids so you can just have a night off is important.
Yes.
Parent. Um, and also, yeah, just taking that time to yourself. I know a big part of my self-care is my mani-pedi days and my therapy days and my staycations where everybody's just leaving me alone. But I can't do those things without my village to have people that I trust to take care of my children while I'm gone. So just rallying around them and doing what you can to understand what's going on so that they can just unplug and get away is super helpful, in my opinion.
And you just said something, for us to be more educated, about autism, because just like you just said, if you need to watch them for a little while or what have you, just like the aunt that knew exactly what to do or whatever, you need to be knowledgeable about what to look for, what to expect or what not to do, those type things. It would be with any child, but even more so, just immerse yourself. Like at the top of the thing we said, if it's 1 in 54 children being diagnosed, you're either directly or indirectly affected at some point. So I think, it's our due diligence to find out more about it. And I know it's relatively new or whatever. We're all learning, but let's all learn together. So I think that's important. Well, Shafran, you want to wrap this up? This has been wonderful. I mean, extremely informative. Just probably could have done more, but what we have talked about and discussed has been great. Your panelists, you all have been awesome. And so we're gonna wrap it up, Fran.
Well, so our anchor verse, I think, is James chapter 1, verse 17. I'll start at 16. Do not be deceived, my beloved brothers. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. Of his own will he brought us forth by the word of truth, that we shall be a kind of first fruits of his creatures. Just want to remind everyone that no matter who you are, where you are at your station of life, what kind of child you have, it's God's doing, and his doing is good, and it is perfect. It's a gift.
Amen.
Yep, we are uniquely perfect and uniquely wired, and God don't make no mistakes. He doesn't make any mistakes. Everything he does is wonderful, including that child that may be differently abled or the one that's giving you a headache.
So true.
That one you just want to choke every now and then. That one's a gift too. So we want to thank our panelist, Kristen Bennett, my most special, bestest friend on the face of the earth. You hear me talk about her a lot on this broadcast. And our family.
Yay, fam.
Christina, Fletcher, so excited to have you guys on, and your wealth of knowledge and your grace to be open and honest and sharing about this. I hope that it helps many people, even as people rewatch this replay. So our next live, wait a minute. Our next session is on May the
6th.
It's on May the 6th. Mom, what are we talking about?
Okay. Our next live.
It's okay. I remember. I'm sorry, y'all. So May 6th, our next session is a very special one. It's our Mother's Day show. We hope to have a special guest who hasn't been voluntold that they're going to be on this show yet. Talking about this perspective of motherhood from 3 different generations. Hint, hint. I think this person is watching. So, yeah. If you're watching, you're gonna be on the show next month. But anyway, we'll have that show, and hopefully we will have later on in the month a show on HBCUs versus PWI. So a heated exchange for the month of May. Also, we want to announce to you guys that Mom and I, ahead of the book we are working on, will be releasing a devotional, a 3-day devotional in the month of May. So stay tuned. We're going to send out some information about getting on our email list so you can stay abreast of the happenings and going ons here. But we are just grateful that you guys continue to come and watch and hang out with us here on the Sweet Tea Gems page. So as always, if you want to email us, you can email us at letstalk@sweetteagems.com with your topic ideas or feedback. You can also follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. All the replays of these videos will be available on Facebook and YouTube. If you've got friends who are not on Facebook, you can send them actually to the YouTube page to catch these. We are actually live simultaneously right now, so there's no reason to miss a show. Y'all come on and tune on in, and we will see you guys back here live on May the 6th. May the 6th. May the 6th. I can't count, y'all. Leave me alone.
May the 6th.
May the 6th. But we love you guys, and we will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.